Welcome back. We're live. Sports on the Hill podcast, True Radio Network, CP3, live from the lab, coming to you talking XFL, DC Defenders, first week of the new inaugural football league that I didn't know what to expect. We talked about it last week, but before we get into the roundtable, I'm going to go ahead and give my 2 cents about what I saw, because I definitely enjoyed the 30-19 victory that the DC Defenders played against the Seattle Dragons. It was a very entertaining game. Robbie broke down some of the subtle differences in the game with the kickoff, that the instead of the teams, as soon as the ball is kicked off, that they, as you normally see in the NFL, that the teams go down the field, they have to wait until the receiving team receives the ball before any of the men can head downfield to go to block. So that was very interesting. The 3-point, 2-point, 1-point conversions definitely add some interesting scoring scenarios. Even if you're down 9 points, that's still considered one possession, because you can get a touchdown and score 3 points on a point after touchdown. So I thoroughly enjoyed the game. The defense for the Defenders, I was thoroughly impressed with the way they played, containing the run, getting pressure on the quarterback, pick six. They had a special teams punt block for a touchdown. I'm liking this XFL already. Hopefully we'll be able to get some press credentials for some of these home games. I know it's a home game this weekend, and I know Robbie might try to put in credentials and see if we can get, one of us can get down into this game. I know Robbie's schedule is a little bit tighter, but if we can get credentials, I will definitely head down there this Saturday. I believe it's a 2 o'clock start against New York. And I know we got Brian Brent on the line, who's also following New York team. So we're going to talk about them a little bit also. But I'm telling folks, man, they say the ticket prices are reasonable. They had about 17,000 folks out there for the kickoff weekend. And I definitely enjoyed the game. I missed some of it in transit. But it was good to see a DC team dominate opening week and actually get a victory, at home, playing some good football. Robbie, did you get what was your take on? I know you got a chance to watch it. I was enjoying a nice little party over there with all the sports weekend stuff that was going on. What did you take away from this, inaugural weekend of the DC Defenders defeating Seattle?
Yeah, no, I thought it was really good. I had a lot of the people that are going to be on in this next roundtable to watch it with me. They had a lot of fun over in the man cave. Real quickly, I was just going to go through how the scoring broke down, just to give people a little sense of the flow. Just a super fast rundown, just the way they know, especially because it's the first ever victory. There was a field goal to start in the first quarter for the DC Defenders. The Dragons got a touchdown, but they did not make their, I think they went for a 1-point conversion on that one. It doesn't display what they go for here, but it was just no extra points. Again, it's either 1, 2, or 5, depending on whether or not you're starting from the 3, 5, or 10-yard line. So it was 6-3 at the end of the first. There was a punt that was blocked and returned for a touchdown. They tried to go for 2, I believe, and it was incomplete. So that made it 6-9. Then there was a touchdown for a 13-yard pass by the Dragons. They did a 1-point attempt that was successful, so that made it to 13-9. The DC Defenders got a field goal, 54-yard field goal at the very end of the second quarter, which I was really impressed because he already missed a 30-something-yard field goal early on. I was like, there's no way he's going to make a 54, and he did, and it made it 12-13, so they were down 1 going into halftime. The Defenders were able to score a 39-yard deep touchdown pass, and a 1-point attempt was successful on the rush, and that made it 19-13. There was some debate in the man cave on whether they should have gone for more than 1 point there to make it a 7-point game, but they made it a 6-point game. Then the Dragons scored a touchdown, and they missed their 1 or 2 point conversion. I forget which they went for. So they made it 19-19. and then the defender scored a touchdown, another deep pass. This one's 31 yards to make it 25-19. They also didn't make the extra point. And then in the fourth quarter, there was an additional touchdown. This was an interception, a defensive touchdown that was returned for 69 yards to make it 31-19. It ended up being pretty close to the predicted score. I think it was predicted to be about 51.5, and it was 51 points. And is that right? No, it was 50 points, and it was supposed to be 51 or something. It was within a point or two, which we were surprised by. And the over-under had us favored at 9.5, and we ended up winning by 12. So it was actually ended up being pretty close. So with that, I'm going to bring in some of the other people in our group to talk about it. We're going to bring in, I'm just going to bring everybody in. Same group of people that was just on during our Wizard talk. We got Brian Brennan, Ken DC People Champ, Arun, and Tim joining us once again on the True Radio Network hotline. So I'm going to start off with Brian. I know that you watched this game, and then you ended up watching the New York team the following day. I'll get your thoughts on the New York a little bit later on in the show. But Brian, what were some of your thoughts seeing DC's first game?
Yeah, it was really cool to watch the first XFL game, or first XFL 2.0 game. It was really, I thought everything about it was really awesome. This type of football is something I really think is really interesting, especially when you see crazy ideas like what they do on the kickoff, and the fact that you can go for a 3-point conversion or a 2-point conversion or a 1-point conversion. There's no more extra points. I think it's all really interesting, and I think it's a lot better than the original. I think it's a lot more planned out than the original XFL. I mean, I've seen the 30 for 30 from ESPN on the XFL, and the first one just seemed like it was all about wrestling and sex, and it was all in your face. And this one seems like it's about the football, and that's what I really like. That's the thing I like the most about this incarnation of the XFL. And thank you again, Robbie, because you explained the rules in really good detail to me before this first DC Defenders game. And that helped me understand it a lot better, because I would have had no idea watching some of what happened in this game if you hadn't told me the rules before we watched this game.
Yeah, unfortunately last week I didn't get to break down all of the rules, including, fully understanding the 1, 2, 3 point. It's very interesting. I also thought the 2 yards down the field, being able to block downfield without it being an illegal man downfield was helpful. And as Carol alluded to earlier, the team, I think it's interesting if it doesn't go at least a certain yardage, you end up gaining on the 45 of your opponent, which is crazy. It also gets a touchback. It's a major touchback. They get it on the 30.
If it doesn't pass the 20-yard line, it goes to the 45.
Yeah, so that's crazy to me. So, so you have to kick it within a very certain specific area, or you get penalized, and the two teams match up much closer to the ball, so you don't have these players running full force downfield like missiles and hurting each other. So I think they really thought some of this stuff through, and they really asked a lot of the fans what they wanted to see. Betsy just had a beautiful shot, almost trickled through, but the goaltender was able to have it.
Hey, Robbie, I want to address the point that Brian was making about the XFL 2.0 being, you talked about it offline. If you recall, when Vince McMahon first rolled out the XFL, it was more of going up against trying to counter the NFL and trying to put a so-called better product out there on the field. Now the fact that they're partnered up with the NFL and have the financial backing and the corporate backing between ESPN, ABC, and Fox, I believe this XFL is going to do well, because the NFL is the only league that doesn't have so-called developmental league, where some of the players that don't make the pros can go to play elsewhere. Because if you think about it, only 10 to 12% of the NCAA players actually make the pros. So you have a lot of these players that try to go to the semi-pros or the Arena Football League, stuff like that, that just went out of business again for the third time, and I don't know how long. And then I think this reincarnation of the league, of the XFL, is definitely going to last, and I think it's definitely a good product that they had out there this past weekend.
Yeah, Kuzi just got hurt on a play that seemed a little dirty, so he's back in the dressing room. Hopefully he's okay, but he was holding his arm, did not look good, so hopefully it's nothing too major on that. It's still 4-1, about halfway through the game. Now we're in the 10th minute of the second period. Yeah, it was I really enjoyed the football, and I thought that it was slightly more elevated college football game and not quite as fast-paced as a pro game. I like the 1 foot down and make understanding what a catch is a little bit better. I also really loved that we got to look into the replay booth and we watched them rewind the video and saw what they were seeing. I thought that was really interesting because you're always wondering, what are they looking at? You know, do they see stuff differently than what we see it? And, yes, they took a little bit longer on some of the reviews, but I like the fact that I think they really got it right. And so that was some of the cool things. Tim, what are some of your thoughts on this?
I really love the new rules. You can already tell from the articles coming out that the NFL is probably going to adopt at least the kickoff rule. I think it's cool. It's like foosball, where you have the two lines of players like right up next to each other, opposite, just staring at each other. It's kind of funny. And obviously the extra point thing is very, very popular. A lot more action. I think the thing that's going to help DC, besides the Redskins issues, is the stadium that we play in. It's the perfect size. It's a great location. DC can sell 17 to 20,000 seats for the XFL games. We wouldn't want to play this in FedEx Field, for example, because it would be really empty. But overall, I like the team. Cardale Jones is one of the biggest stars in the league. He clearly is playing well, had a ton of passing yards. And, you know, if DC went far and made it to the playoffs, I think it would be a pretty big deal, probably bigger than, like, the Mystics. No offense, but...
Right. It's a good point. We actually do have some breaking Mystics news. Unfortunately, Christy Tolliver will not be returning. She's still a coach of the Wizards, but she's going to be going back to the LA Sparks, unfortunately. That news came out today. Braden Holtby has just been put into the game because, unfortunately, Sam just let in the 5th goal, and now it's 5-1, and now it's another really bad game for the Capitals, which is really disappointing. So we're not going to put the score back on screen anymore. I'm kind of done with that. Arun, some of your quick thoughts on this. You also broke some news to me a few minutes ago, I believe, about the first XFL firing. Arun? Arun, you're mute.
Well, let me go ahead before Arun jumps in to give the breaking news, since we're breaking news on different leagues right now. Report came out about an hour ago about Quentin Dunbar of the Redskins requesting a trade or to be released. I'm not sure what it's about. I haven't had a chance to check it out. But remember when I talked about Trent Williams and he vowed not to play for the team and all of this talk about Rivera wanting to sit down with him? This is what you get when you have players that's under contract making vows not to play for the team, and then the team bending over backwards to accommodate an outdated player that they really don't need, that they can trade and get something else for. Now you have a young player that's on the rise, that's asking to be traded out of your organization when you're making moves trying to solidify your team. But we'll talk about that later when football coverage comes back for the NFL. We're covering the XFL right now. And Robbie, back to you.
I saw that headline and I was just like, what the fuck, I mean?
Yeah. All right, so real quickly, Lars Eller, he kind of kicks it in, but they don't call it a kick in because he's not directing it and his boot doesn't leave the ice. He kind of angles it in. So for now, that goal, I think, is going to count. There was a ref right there, and so they didn't challenge it. So that goal will stand. So it makes it a little bit closer. It's now 5-2 Islanders. But Arun, are you with us? Yes, not. All right. Anyway, he sent us this message in our group chat. The LA Wildcats have fired defensive coordinator and linebackers coach Pepper Johnson. It's crazy that the defensive coach could already be fired after just 1 week, but I guess they felt that he did so bad, and season is so short.
They also, sorry to interrupt, but the defensive captain of the team, who was obviously starting and playing a ton of plays, also tweeted that he got cut. So clearly they were like one loss, top defensive player and the coach are out. They're not messing around.
Crazy. That's crazy. All right, so let me pull up a couple of the upcoming schedule. I want to talk about some of the other teams and some of the other games real fast. So obviously we won 31-19, the DC Defenders over the Seattle Dragons, but constantly want to call it the Sea Dragons because if you read it, it's SEA Dragons. So that's an interesting marketing thing that they may. It may be tough in the future. Anyway, so the LA Wildcats lost horribly to the Houston Roughnecks in the second part of the Saturday doubleheader. They lost that game 37-17. I watched part of that game. The Roughnecks looked pretty good. The Wildcats looked pretty bad. Brian, did you end up watching any of that game?
I saw a little bit of it, but like you said, Houston looked like a really dominant team, and LA, clearly there are some sort of issues with everything you said with them firing their defensive coordinator, who actually used to play for the Giants, and what happened with their defensive captain too. So maybe things aren't quite in order in LA yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then the next day, Champ, did you see any of these other games? I'll just ask that question after that.
No, I only saw the Defenders game, and I was thoroughly entertained by the Defenders game. And yeah, that's all I got for you right there. The Defenders game was all I watched this weekend for XFL, and I love the fact that we have a team in Washington D.C. that can play offense and defense outside the Redskins. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and the special teams. I thought that was good too. So yeah, they have all the facets, and they started off a little slow, but they definitely played well. Let's get into the next game. I know Brian watches, so I'll talk to him just for a second about it. The New York Guardians versus the Tampa Bay Vipers. The Guardians ended up winning that game 23-3. It was the first half of the Sunday game. I thought the Guardians played really well. I watched that game. Where are the Guardians playing, Brian, and what are your thoughts on your New York team?
The Guardians are playing at MetLife Stadium, which is where the Giants and Jets play. I think that personally it's not a great choice for a venue because this is the XFL and it's not quite the NFL. So they're not going to get huge crowd sizes. And I feel like a better place to play would have been Red Bull Arena, which is where the New York Red Bulls, the MLS team plays. But I think that the crowd that was there, I mean, I was hooked right away. I had a choice basically between rooting for the Defenders because I live here now and the Guardians because I'm from New York, and I was pretty hooked by the Guardians right away. I really loved the style they played. They were defensive. They were great on defense and offense as well. I thought they really clicked against this game. I mean, maybe Tampa Bay is not the best team. Who knows? But I really loved what I saw from the Guardians in this game, and I was totally hooked from this game to be a fan of that team. So I'm rooting for them the rest of the way going forward, no doubt.
Sounds good. Well, we'll definitely we'll get your thoughts on that game for sure next week. And I know that Carol is in talks with some other people to also talk XFL in upcoming weeks. I know that I won't necessarily be doing hour 2, and Carol will be leading some of the charge on that coming forward. But I'm sure that he'll want to get your New York perspective for that one. And then the last game was the Battlehawks versus the Dallas Renegades. The Battlehawks ended up winning. The Renegades had an opportunity at the end to march down the field and threw an interception. I thought it was actually a pretty decent game between these two teams. It was kind of interesting to see Bob Stoops back coaching again. He was a longtime coach for Oklahoma. I think that the style of this can be similar to a college football, so I think this might actually be a good fit for him. Unfortunately for him, he got that loss. And it's unfortunate for the DC Defenders because the Battlehawks are actually in our division where the Dallas team is on the Western Conference. So, again, there's 4 teams in each division. The Defenders, the Vipers, the Guardians, and the Battlehawks are in the Eastern. So that's who we're fighting for. Top 2 teams make the playoffs in each side, and then the winner of that sort of semifinal will play in the XFL Finals. Next week, we've got a New York Guardians at the DC Defenders. That'll be another 2 o'clock game. As Carol mentioned, we're going to try again for press passes. If we do get them, we'll let you know. The Vipers, so that'll be a battle between 2 1-0 teams. It's interesting how these playing out, because the next game is the Vipers versus the Dragons. Both of those teams lost their first game, so they're going to be fighting to try to stay out of the cellar. The next game Sunday is also going to be between the Renegades and the Wildcats, and both of those teams lost at least one, so they're going to try to fight to stay out of the cellar. And then the last game is going to be between the Battlehawks and the Houston Roughnecks, and both of those teams won. So 3 out of 4 Eastern teams won last week, and so it'll be interesting to see after week 2 where the standings will end up being. But some interesting matchups for week 2 as well. I'll start off with Tampa. What are your thoughts about playing the New York Guardians next week?
I will say this. Cardell Jones is a grown-ass man. He went out there in his first XFL game and threw for almost 300 yards, threw 2 touchdowns, and no turnovers. The defense played well. Special teams played well. I'm predicting that the Defenders will get their second win going up against New York. No disrespect, but it's just facts. That's all I got for you.
All right. Before I let Brian give his take on it, Carol, I want to get your thoughts on this matchup real quickly between the Guardians and the Defenders.
Well, I didn't really get a chance to check out the Guardians, but I know they're one of the top teams they're supposed to be in the league. I'm impressed with the Defenders' defense. Cardell Jones, he played well in the second half. First half, I saw some issues, low throws, throwing off his back foot, not necessarily reading what the defense was doing, but he definitely stepped up in the second half, so I don't want to be super critical. It was a win. Hopefully he can have a complete game from the start and doesn't have some of those hiccups that he had. He didn't have any turnovers like he mentioned, but you want to see your quarterback crisp through the whole game, not just through the second half of it. But it was I'm loving what I'm seeing from this. You know, I'm a defensive guy, so the pressure, the turnovers, the defensive scoring, that's all the beautiful thing for me. So I'll definitely be tuned in if we're not there live bringing you the game down at Audi Field on Saturday at 2 o'clock versus New York.
Hey.
Cool. All right. So, Brian, I'll let you have your rebuttal against the Guardians versus Defenders. What do you think about this matchup?
Well, I still don't really quite know what to expect because we're only played 1 week and everything. You know, even the teams that started 0-1 could end up winning the XFL championship. But I really like what I saw from our defense, and I really like what I saw, especially at quarterback, from Matt McGloin. I think like Cardell Jones, he went to a Big Ten powerhouse in Penn State, and I think they're very similar teams. So I think this could be a great game. I think this could be the highlight of the XFL schedule next weekend. These are two, I think, judging off what we saw week 1, these are two very good teams. And hopefully the Guardians win, but I don't have any ill will towards the Defenders at all. I hope you guys have a great season too.
Well, I appreciate that. Arun, what are some of your thoughts about the first week, and what excites you in week 2?
Yeah, I thought it was fitting that the Defenders' first touchdown was scored by the defense on that special teams play. Overall, they had two defensive touchdowns. Cardell Jones was rated the #1 player on Pro Fantasy Football Focus analytics site for the NFL, so that's pretty good that he was #1 rated quarterback. This upcoming week should be a good game. XFL Checkdown on Twitter has the Defenders as #1 and the Guardians as #2 in their power rankings, so potentially could be a good game. But right now, I'm going to go with Vegas, even though they don't, I don't know, Tim was suggesting that maybe they don't really know what they're talking about, but right now, the Defenders are the #1 favorite to win the championship to start the season, which is pretty good.
Yeah, interesting. Do you happen to know the early line on this game? Has it been announced yet?
No, I have not caught the line of this game yet.
Defenders by 3 or 4. Okay, thank you, Tim. Yeah, so it'll be interesting because we had a lot of conversations off air in the man cave on how do they figure out these. And they were pretty close for the most part for the 4 games. They seem to predict them pretty decently. The Renegades were favored over the Battlehawks, but other than that game, I think that all of them went the way Vegas thought. Maybe not by the right number of points, but it was still impressive that they were able to even pick them, not knowing a whole lot other than practices. I have to mention the Capitals are on the power play. There's 42 seconds left on this power play. 3:11 left in the second period.
Hey, Robbie, they actually had more than practice. I was watching the game, the Defenders game, and apparently they did have some exhibition games because apparently the Defenders in Seattle played in the preseason or exhibition, and they had some animosity during that game, which trickled out to the game this past weekend. So they did have some like exhibition games. So I guess that's probably how they helped figure out the line on these games.
Yeah, as you mentioned.
Why did somebody drop the F-bomb on TV?
Oh man, the live mics are going to be the death of the XFL because they also dropped the MF bomb too. So they're going to do something about those live mics. So they have to get that 5-second delay or something because if not, the FCC going to have fun finding them all season.
TJ Oshie just at the Ovechkin office and got his 21st goal of the season, bringing the Capitals within 2. It's a power play goal. His 233rd goal of his career brings it within 2. It's now Washington 3, Islanders 5, 3 minutes left. And there's still 27 seconds in the power play. Why is that? Was it a major or is it a TV glitch?
We're winning. We're winning this game, man. We're winning this game.
Interesting. So I'm curious if this power play is actually still happening or if NBC. Oh no, it went away. Okay, so NBC Sports Washington was just a little slow on the uptake. All right, that's fine. I'll take the goal and from TJ Oshie, and he joined. I think we've got 3 20 goal scorers on our team, 3 or 4. So that's really good. All right, so I'm pretty excited about the Defenders. I think that there's definitely a lot that we'll break into next week. I hope that the Capitals find a way to come back in this game. I'm going to let our panel have one final thought, each one of them, before we let them go, and then Carol, I'll let you close up the episode. Tim, we'll start with you. Any final thoughts before we let you go tonight?
No, I just think Cardale's a big-time quarterback. We know he can win a championship in a red jersey. I think he's going to do it again. I'm going to go ahead and guarantee the XFL championship because there's no consequences anyway if they don't. So
I like it. Tim's been paying attention to our podcast very closely, clearly. Thank you, Tim, for joining us, and we'll talk to you.
guys.
All right. So the next person we're going to let go is Brian Brennan. Brian, let us know your final thoughts. I know we'll be playing both the Knicks and your Guardians this week, so it's a big week for Washington versus New York.
Yeah, I just want to say let's go Knicks, let's go Guardians, and hopefully New York gets 2 wins over DC, but it's all love at the end of the day for everybody in DC and Sports on the Hill. So have a good night, everybody. Thanks for having me on, Robbie.
Thank you. All right, Arun, what are your final thoughts of the evening?
Yeah, the XFL is doing pretty well in Seattle. They just sold out their tickets for this game in 6 hours, and congratulations to Giannis Antetokounmpo for his first son being born, Liam. And that's it. Thanks for having me on.
Sounds good. Thank you for joining us. And the last member of our team is Ken, DC People's Champ. Let people know you have an episode coming up this Friday, and if so, what are you guys talking about?
Yes, indeed. We have an episode of No Spot Podcast this Friday, and big news. We just posted on our fan page that the original tag team of the No Spot Podcast, Chris Kazama, will be on for the second hour of the podcast to talk about Fight Club Pro Wrestling, the newest independent wrestling promotion in D.C. They're having their second show this coming Saturday. He will be on for the entire second hour to talk about that, and we're going to talk about all of that this coming Friday as well as the week that was in wrestling. So I'm very excited for this Friday, and I'm very excited for this Saturday, the Fight Club Pro Wrestling crowning the first ever Pan-African World Diaspora Champion. It's a championship dedicated and created for all African-American wrestlers. So I'm very excited for that.
Sounds great. Look forward to finding out more about it on the show. No Spots Podcast, Friday. Catch DC's People Champ right there. Ken, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Holla.
All right, and with that, Carol, we've had fit a full show. I tried to fit it in by 8:45. I was just under the wire. So there's a lot to talk about. Hopefully the Caps find a way to come back in this game. Any final thoughts from you before we end the show tonight?
As I said, I think the Caps are going to come back and win this game. They came back against the Islanders not too long, a couple of weeks ago when they came back and scored, I believe it was 3 goals. If they were down in the last minute of the game with 2 6-on-5 goals. The XFL, definitely we're going to be bringing you more coverage. We're working on, as I say, getting the press credentials. I'm working on getting another analyst on the air to break down the XFL and give you guys some different perspectives from different folks in the DMV sports media, because we do have connections like that, because that's what we do here at Sports on the Hill podcast on True Radio Network. We're deep. We roll with a lot of different folks, a lot of different things behind the scenes that you don't know about, so you never know who you might see or hear on this show. Team SportsOTHP is deep. Make sure you go check out the website, SportsOTHP.com. Go check out the Beats by CP3 on SoundCloud. You heard the track by Brian Hart during the music break, which I'm going to play in a little while when we get ready to sign off, because I'm working on the remix with a couple of local DMV rap artists. So if you got any music, I rarely do this, but because I'm dibble-dabbling in the music game, if you got any music, got some love for what you do, you got a craft, send it to me. Go check out my page, CP3. Just Google me. It pops up. Send me your music. We can talk. We're going to have some new music coming soon on the music break from a rock band from one of my Facebook friends to send me some music. So stay tuned. If you got some music, we'll play it through our music break, pub you, and, it is what it is. But that's what we do here on Sports on the Hill podcast on True Radio Network. We appreciate y'all listening as always. Hopefully y'all checking out the Caps game. Let's go Caps, because they're going to win this. I predicted it. It's going to happen. Tune in next week. Well, you might see something pop up on my Facebook live feed. You never know. But y'all have a good night. Check out the track Submissive by Brian Hart, Radio Ready, and produced by Beats by CP3. Y'all have a good night, and we out. Y'all be easy.